Well, from severe thunderstorms to tropical storms and geomagnetic storms, we're talking about all of that. So we've got a couple of minor disturbances here, little mid-level waves, we call these short waves, moving through the mountains and into the panhandle areas of Texas and Oklahoma. And these will be the focal points for some potential thunderstorm development here these next few days. Pretty marginal risk today, very small area in the Texas panhandle, but a couple of storms could produce some strong wind gusts there, and we'll have some pretty modest instability values there later today too. But tomorrow already, Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk for day 2, so that might be something more to watch. It looks like mainly a wind and hail threat, again with these storms that could become more widespread than the activity today. So we've got a hatched area for high probability of some large hail. And also a decent shot of some of those higher severe wind gusts. Not really much of a tornado day. It has that it has a pretty low threshold for probabilities for tomorrow. But today, again, just a little bit of instability, the Cape or the thunderstorm energy potential. But tomorrow, more widespread and higher values, especially again in the Oklahoma areas where things will come together just right to potentially produce some of these wind gusts. Still a couple of questions as to how these storms will evolve, however. NAM model has higher wind gusts more on the Kansas-Oklahoma border, but some of our rapid update models a little bit further south and lines much more with that day 2 severe weather outlook. So a couple of isolated storms in the Texas panhandle this evening. Again, those could produce some high wind gusts and large hail. But then tomorrow, we're going to look for more widespread storms to develop across Texas and Oklahoma in 2 rounds. That initial round of some cells, and then more storms late in the night into early Wednesday that could produce, again, some of those high wind gusts. And then that will continue to be the area we'll watch for early Wednesday, and maybe even some more storms firing late in the day Wednesday. Marginal risk right now on the day 3. But we also have a new hurricane in the Atlantic. It's the peak of the season, so not very surprising there. But we have a Category 1 storm, Nigel, in the middle of the Atlantic. Sustained winds right now about 80 miles an hour. This is expected to stay in the Atlantic, though. It's going to take a hard right turn, but it is going to become a major hurricane before it moves off into the North Atlantic. So even though it's not really going to affect many areas, it's still significant that each one of these storms this season seems to be able to reach that Category 3 or higher threshold more easily and more quickly than some storms used to historically. But we're also watching an area off the coast of the U.S. that could be potentially developing some tropical weather, 30% chance here. And this happens sometimes where you have what was a cold front, normal weather that can take on tropical characteristics, and so sometimes that can become a tropical storm. So that's something that we're watching, but also the Hurricane Center, high probability that we're going to see something develop here in the typical origination spot for tropical storms and hurricanes just off the coast of Africa there in the eastern Atlantic. So as I mentioned, peak of the season. But from that to geomagnetic storms, good chance at seeing northern lights for the northern U.S. Late tonight, looks like peak activity forecast to be about 4 to 7 a.m., so just before sunrise. And if you can get some clear skies, just might cooperate. So when we get to that higher KP index, which is essentially measuring the energy of that geomagnetic storm, you get to be able to see it further south. So anywhere from Montana, North Dakota, most of Minnesota, Wisconsin, into Michigan, decent shot at seeing those auroras late tonight, so maybe set the alarm early. There will be some clouds, though. Looks like northeast, probably too much cloud cover to see this. Even Minnesota, kind of a mix of patchy clouds and clear skies, but if you're lucky, you might see it through some of those clear breaks. Of course, as usual, get away from city lights, and you'll have a better chance of seeing those lights.